what I would like to do is just move right along to our first speaker for the night. There's feedback. Where is that coming from? Take care of that. Okay, I'm going to mute everybody for a second. All right. Sorry, everybody. I've muted you all. So, Margaret Kimberley is the founder and editor and senior columnist of Black Agenda Report. She is New York State Green and a member of the Green Eco-Socialist Network Interim Steering Committee. Ms. Kimberley is the author of Presidential, Black America and the Presidents, and a contributor to the anthology In Defense of Julian Assange. Her work as an activist includes leadership roles in the Black Alliance for Peace and United National Anti-War Coalition. So welcome, Margaret Kimberley. Please unmute yourself. And you can stay on camera too if you want, Felina. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. So we're good. We're good. This is Zoom. We're not trying to do big budget things here, but it's all about conversation. So Margaret, one of the things I wanted to ask you, because something that's really inspired me is the fact that you launched or co-founded Black Agenda Report. Would you mind sharing with the audience struggles that you faced with censorship regarding a Black Agenda Report?
Sure. Well, just briefly, we founded, and that's the late Bruce Dixon, Glenn Ford, and myself in 2006. We had previously been at another publication, Black Commentator, which still exists, and we decided to strike out on our own. And we present analysis from a Black left perspective. And that has always been problematic for a number of reasons. We started November 2006. So the very next year, we started hearing about Barack Obama. And this was not official censorship, but I do want to use this opportunity to talk about what happens when you say things that are outside of the establishment narrative. And in 2008, the establishment narrative was, isn't it wonderful that we could have a Black president? Now, when I say that we report, and Bruce Dixon was a longtime Green, I want to point that out too, I'm sure you knew him. We were not going to roll over and suddenly say that Barack Obama, who of course represented neoliberalism, imperialism, that's how you get to be president, right? We weren't going to change our stance because this new president looked like us. And that was problematic, and it was not censorship, but we took a lot of heat. We took a lot of heat from other Black people, from people on the so-called left, and that's a problem. So many people consider themselves leftists, and I don't think they are. So that was one of, and we did not change. We didn't capitulate. We didn't change our politics during those 8 years. Now, the censorship, actual censorship, of course, as being independent media, you're always censored. You're overlooked. You're not included, no matter how good your work is, and our work is very good. But after the 2016 election, and Donald Trump won, squeaked through in the Electoral College thanks to Hillary Clinton's incompetence. By the way, I always say this, she wanted him to be the Republican nominee. She thought he'd be easiest to beat. Raised $1 billion and then couldn't get 78,000 more votes in the right places. So one of the ways that she covered herself was to blame foreign interference, namely Russia, for her defeat. And that year, at the end of 2016, there appeared this odd article in the Washington Post. It was all about prop or not, propaganda or not. And it was anonymous, an anonymous list of websites which they said were friendly to Russia. And Black Agenda Report was on the list. Now, we were not upset about being on the list per se. It was proof that we were independent. It was proof that we didn't follow the establishment narrative. It was proof that we did our job as journalists. So in one sense, and we were the only Black site on this list. And but right away, this censorship began. Suddenly, we were deranked, along with a lot of other left websites. So we couldn't find ourselves on Google anymore. I would look for an article that I knew I had written, and then I couldn't find it. And it was happening to a lot of us. There was this collaboration between Democrats and big tech, which is only intensified over time. So that is how that began. And I just want to say about this prop or not, it's no accident that it appeared, and they still exist, by the way, in the Washington Post. So that's Jeff Bezos. So that's Washington. It's the Democratic Party. That's what it was. And as you all know, the Green Party was also blamed for Hillary Clinton's inability to get a few more votes. But in any case, that was the start of censorship of our work and of others. Now that's only gotten worse. People and organizations I know that we all know in that time have been kicked off of social media. So the Facebook announces they are going to decide what's worthy news and not by listening to the Atlantic Council. That's NATO. So anyone who espouses a point of view that differs from the US foreign policy establishment is endangered. So all of a sudden, Palestinian sites were kicked off. Anybody Israel didn't like, they just picked up the phone and they were kicked off of Facebook. Twitter is the same, a great publication, Hood Communist. You should read that blog. We pick up their work a lot in Black Agenda Report. They were recently kicked off of Twitter. So this is something that is only getting worse. This collaboration, as I put it, between liberals and big tech is terrible. But Russiagate, which was a fraud. I wish we had more time to talk about that. But it's a gift that keeps on giving. So Democrats keep demanding that social media censor more often and censor a lot of different things. And I know you're going to talk about reporting on COVID, which has been very problematic for a lot of reasons. But politically, we have seen, I want to give an example. Twitter, last fall during the campaign, there was a story in the New York Post about Joe Biden's son, Hunter, and who's struggled with the drug problem. Anyway, he's so high that he left a laptop at a repair place, never went back to get it. It fell into then it belonged, literally, legally belonged to the owner of the repair shop. And he had, pictures of himself smoking crack. But most damaging was an email from a Ukrainian saying, "Thank you for setting up this meeting with your father," who during the Obama administration was the point person on Ukraine. Twitter blocked any access to this article, and they said it was fake news. And now it was up to the public to decide, but they clearly wanted to help Biden. And that's what we're up against. So this literally was disappeared. You could not post a link to this article on Twitter, and Facebook did the same. So, and since that time, they have deplatformed the former president, Donald Trump. Now, if a former president can be deplatformed, anybody can be deplatformed. And that's why I'm not in favor of it. I don't miss hearing from Donald Trump at all, but I find it very troubling that everybody else does not see why this is so dangerous. So that was a longish answer. I started out talking about Black Agenda Report and then went on, but I hope that was okay.
No, that's a great answer. I mean, because there's not a short answer in these. This is the discussion, and that's why we're setting this up this way. Especially when we're talking about the censorship that goes on. On a political level, for example, you're a Green, right? I'm a Green, Selena. And we've gone through the struggle out in the streets when we're talking about our candidates. We're talking about vote for this presidential candidate, vote for this city council person. It's like, well, I never heard about them. Are they viable? How come I've never heard about them? And they don't realize, just because you haven't heard about them doesn't mean they don't exist. And
Right.
so, right. So this is what this whole honesty thing is about. Like you said, later on, we're going to talk about COVID and other issues. And that's the most important thing we're trying to suggest in this broadcast is that just because you haven't heard about it and because you listen to CNN, MSNBC, or whatever corporate media, doesn't mean that these things aren't happening out there. One of the things I wanted to ask you, so with Black Agenda Report, you were deplatformed from Google and declassified, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you can find us, but you can't find us as easily as you used to. If you, it's hard for me to do searches. I mean, even now, even several years after that fact, you can find us, but it's not so easy.
Yeah, which is so hilarious because the original function of Google was to be a search engine.
Yeah, yeah, unless you fall out of favor. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that because one of the things I noticed about 10 years ago, because I have an indie news website and I would post articles about Green Party candidates and such. And then I noticed that whenever I posted articles about Green Party candidates in the US, they would never get picked up on Google News alerts. But if I posted, about entertainment or whatever, that got in there fine. And then I
Yeah.
did a search on Google News alerts for like Green Party, and the only alerts that would come in was from other countries. So back then, I was telling people, look, they're censoring it. You're silly. That doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, I absolutely. I know this happened to me today. I was interviewed on a news show on RT called Crosstalk, and I posted this on Facebook. I got no responses. Now, I never get no response. I get a couple of likes, a couple of reactions. And so I reposted it. I said, let me take out the word RT. And I got like one response. I am convinced just mentioning RT meant that, the algorithms disappeared this post. And you're right about the Green candidates and what happened to the Green Party in general. The Green Party was blamed for Hillary Clinton's, everybody was to blame except Hillary Clinton. For her loss. So people don't know what the Green, I hear people say, why don't the Greens run candidates? Why do they just run for president when they don't have a chance and all they are is spoilers? And I'm like, no, we run candidates all over the country all the time. But it's a heavy lift to convince people that there can be something outside of the duopoly, which doesn't meet our needs, by the way. And we're constantly being told to vote for somebody and we'll push them to the left, but then you see Joe Biden already lying and the so-called progressives already capitulating. But so that's all a kind of censorship that, as you pointed out, your Google alerts don't get picked up. Green Party candidates either are not mentioned at all, and if mentioned, are smeared and condemned. So that's all part of the censorship, is to tell people these are your two choices, and don't ask for too much because Trump, and that was the other thing. Donald Trump has been he's a perfect foil. You have to vote for Biden because if you don't, Trump can win again, and Trump, and it's your fault if you don't vote for these horrible people who ruining the planet and causing wars and, lie about raising the minimum wage and lie about a measly additional $600 in a stimulus payment. But if you don't do it, and they lose, these horrible people who don't help you, it's all your fault. So that's a different kind of censorship where you may either not mention a group or individual at all, or when you do, it's vilification and smear.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Felina, do you have any questions for Margaret?
I had my mic muted. Sorry.
It's okay.
Well, I we've all experienced it. I know I was screen capturing how very that interview we did with Angela Walker, and how we were getting no traffic on that live stream. And I was capturing it and sharing it to the campaign team. And they were also talking about the throttling of their posts getting suppressed. And um, that's why we hardly ever spend money on ads for Facebook or Twitter, because it's just money going down the drain because they're already suppressing the organic. And it's, I don't know. In the times that when we did started putting ads in, we were attracting the wrong type of people. They wanted to make sure that the ads were attracting people that attack us, and it was just not worth it. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the other reason they censor. They don't want people to know about alternatives, alternative information, alternative politics. They are right. If people knew more about the Green Party, they would ditch the Democrats. And so they suppress. The obvious thing that should happen is let it happen. Everybody make the case for themselves. That's why I'm not afraid of being called a spoiler. It's not my responsibility to get votes for the Democratic Party. They raise billions of dollars. And if you can't guarantee a win, that's on you. And that's not democracy. Democracy is supposed to mean that everybody hears what they want to hear, and that there's a level playing field, and that no matter what you're saying, you can be heard. And that was supposed to be the promise of the internet, that everybody now had this opportunity. But what do we see now? Facebook and Twitter deliberately choosing sides, making political choices. The CEO of YouTube recently said, well, yeah, our algorithms preference corporate media. We don't want to help some guy, doing a video in his basement. Well, that was supposed to be the purpose of YouTube, that all of us had this opportunity in your basement or your attic or your backyard or wherever you were. And now they make these statements saying, we didn't really mean that. I mean, we didn't really mean that. So yeah, it's not democracy. And you can't have a democracy if people don't have information. This idea that they have elections and let us vote every couple of years, that's not democracy, not in and of itself, not when you select people, not when you deplatform people, not when you choose candidates to pay attention to or not pay attention to, or make certain that certain people aren't seen or heard. So that's the end result of, and that's why I correct people all the time when they start talking about American democracy, whatever. I for a variety of reasons, I tell them we don't have a democracy. So.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's funny. So part of what I'm doing too is I'm also monitoring the comments. I'm getting feedback. I'm going to mute people. I'm sorry. I'm getting comments about, like Nader in 2000, how everyone blamed Ralph Nader. Where is that coming from? Everyone blamed Ralph Nader for, getting George W. Bush and whatever, and once again, well, if you look at Wikipedia, right, it's not the best source in the world, but you can see the vote totals. You see so many more candidates that got more votes than Nader in Florida. The fact that he was excluded from debates, he was excluded from press, and and the main focus of the press for Ralph Nader's campaign was just to demonize him and call him a spoiler. That's when we first got that. So like you said, Margaret, before, it's like every time there's a green running, it seems like the press's job is not to promote them in any way, but it's to find out a new way to demonize them. 2000, you're a spoiler. I forgot what they were in 2004. 2016, or Russian bots, 2000, so it's pretty crazy.
I wanted to mention something else about Florida. There were a lot of registered Democrats who voted for George Bush. Nobody blamed them and they excluded the fact that they stole that state by keeping Black people from voting. They claimed Florida is one of these states until recently where felons lost their right to vote forever. And they claimed people were felons who were not and took them off the rolls. Florida was stolen. That should have been a huge story. You said Wikipedia, which is sometimes good for basic information, but Wikipedia is a surveillance state cutout. They censor all the time. There are people, good journalists, friends of mine at, for example, the Gray Zone, who are doing great work about whistleblowers in Syria. And not only can they not be heard, so one of them, Aaron Mate, who's done a great job debunking everything in Russiagate, they don't post any references to him, even if he writes, and he writes for The Nation. So you can't hear anything about Aaron on Wikipedia. There's a man in Britain, Philip Cross, who's a person who posts and edits constantly and says negative things about anyone who is perceived as an enemy of the surveillance state. So I just, since you said Wikipedia, and I use it, but I just wanted to throw that in since we're talking about censorship.
Great. And actually, I was going to ask you, so you said you were on Crosstalk earlier today, right?
Yesterday, yes.
Oh, yesterday, yeah. And so Peter Lavelle, I love that show. I didn't get to see it. What was this topic that you were talking about yesterday?
The topic was the Biden era, and it was about Biden's speech before Congress, which is not being called State of the Union, whatever it was. And myself and two other guests had a fairly heated discussion about it. I'll send you the link to it. But I was saying that, Biden, there's so much, and this is also censorship, the pro-Biden propaganda. So Biden says he'll, raise the minimum wage and doesn't. The stimulus check will be $2,000. It isn't. We're going to have, what else was it? Well, he already said he was going to veto Medicare for all, but the fact that he sometimes acts like he's not the president. I think everybody should, no working person should live in poverty, as if he has nothing to do with it. The fact that they keep touting him this transformational, a new FDR. Many of these proposals are helpful, but they're temporary. They only last a year. This trope now that he's cut child poverty in half is a lie. It was said that it was possible for that to happen if the minimum wage went up, among other things that have not happened, and if these programs became permanent. But there's constant lying on his behalf, and that was my point on the show.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And before I go over to our next guest, if people want to find out more about you and your recent book, where should they go?
Black Agenda Report, we publish every week. My Twitter is Freedom Ride Blog. I'm patreon.com/Margaret Kimberley. Here's my book. I just put it in front of can people see it?
Yeah, there you go, a little bit. Yeah.
Presidential Black America and the Presidents. It's an excellent book, published last year. People tell me it's a nice brisk read, 45 essays about each president and their treatment of Black people. You can get it from the publisher, Steerforth Press, steerforth.com. It's an ebook, a Kindle, an audiobook. You can get it from Barnes & Noble, that other place whose name I don't mention. You can get it from them if you just want to. And at your local bookstore, obviously. And support local bookstores. Bookshop.org is a great site to purchase books from independent booksellers across the country. I wanted to say thank you to you and Felina. This was a great opportunity to talk about the issue of censorship, and came up not just in my remarks that we're not, just to sum up, as free as we seem to think. And we have to be very aware of the people and the institutions that limit our speech, and therefore the right of everyone to hear information that they want to hear. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you shortly.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining, Margaret. And, and why you're so amazing to me is because I know that we have different points of views on a lot of subjects, but the most important thing is we both believe, as citizen journalists or whatever we want to call ourselves, is that you have to let the speech out there. You can't have a debate if there's only one side that's allowed to talk. So thank you.
And let people make up their own minds.
Make up their own minds. Yeah.
We should be doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
all.
much. So great having you. Okay.